I'm just
take your time.
because I know that camera's got better resolution. We are going live in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, the stream is officially on. Okay.
That's good to hear.
Ain't that nice? Tech is actually working with us for once.
That's a rare occasion indeed.
Ain't it? So everything just kind of went well today. Which means we're going to have a bad show.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be terrible.
I
Man, we're getting Nacho or Clint back to join us.
You know, I wish I hadn't spent money on this branding. It's getting really hard to find a third DM. I got some people though to ask about.
Help us out. Yeah.
You know, a couple
buds. You're up to no good.
Yeah, a couple of friends. We'll try to bring onto the show. I want to try to get Luke back on the show, too. Need to contact that man's. That's not how you do that. This is fascinating live air.
Indeed. Well, I'm sorry for not having much to say.
Oh, snap. Nacho's actually watching. He's at home. Oh, shit. Let's try to get him on Skype really quick. Nacho, boot up Skype. We're going to make this happen, damn it.
Well, he hasn't been clued into anything we're talking about.
No, he's just going to have to suffer.
Yep.
Suffer. Nacho. Dylan. This is why I hate his last name. I have found 3 Dylan Vahoviches. what an issue.
A tragedy.
Oh, Nacho can't Skype. He's just watching.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, so it goes.
All right. Well,
have we dawdled enough? Should I close the door?
Yeah, let's shut the door and let's start the show. I don't get a cigarette before we start. Sad. All right. The encoders are on.
Back into the picture with me.
Paul is in his chair. I have my yerba mate.
Nice hiss.
Yeah. Let's play the fight song.
Indeed. Welcome, everybody, to the 3DMs podcast. We are currently on episode 34. I am Jake,
and Jaked. Yeah, I'm off to a smooth start, and you're Paul, and we don't have a third host as per usual because they just keep dropping like flies. They keep dying on us, even though one's commenting in the chat right now.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Nacho. You're still alive. We love you. So let's dive right into it.
Well, first, let's say we're going to be talking about Waterdeep Dragon Heist today before we dive right into it. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, we're diving right into Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Brand new adventure that came out, and let's just go over my contentious history with running official modules. It bugs me. I've never really enjoyed many a module. I like to steal from modules. I always find little nuggets of stuff that I like, but I rarely ever see one that comes out and I'm like, ooh, I want to play that.
I should run this module exactly as written. I mean, it's a lucrative business, and I'll be honest, I don't think I've run an official module once, maybe in my entire career. I just like creating stuff too much, but I also have copious amounts of free time that most people don't have. So I definitely understand why people do it.
Yeah. So, I was initially intrigued, though, by the premise for this one. The last couple of ones that have come out have usually focused on some sort of evil. Tomb of Annihilation was building up to a fight with Alcerac. That was the entire thing, was going into a kind of revamped Tomb of Horrors and punching a demi-lich in the face. Ravenloft, or Curse of Strahd, Ravenloft, I have that one just for posterity, and I enjoy parts of the module, and they do horror very well, which we will get into next month when we can start talking about spooky stuff. But Waterdeep Dragon Heist kind of stood out. So
why did it stand out for you?
Because they're talking about stealing stuff, and it's a low-level adventure, which are two things I really enjoy.
Yeah, it's a level 1 through 5 adventure, although it says 5 and up in some of the later sections.
Yeah, but let's just, now that we've covered the basics, let's get into what we think. So this is going to be a review of the book. If you are a player and you are about to play in a Waterdeep Dragon Heist game,
I would recommend muting your sound for the next 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, probably about 30 minutes. We're just going to be going over everything from the DM side of things, what we think about it after an initial read through, and just, making sure you get the best bang for your buck. So speaking of cash, let's talk about how much this bad boy costs. It's $50 if you buy it at your friendly mom and pop. If you're Canadian, then it is $65.95.
Take that, you damn Canucks.
And if you have to buy it in Europe, I don't know the damn price. I'm sorry. Everything is a lot cheaper on Amazon, probably about $27 US.
But then you're supporting Jeff Bezos, our cursed overlord.
Well, some people have different feelings on him. But moving on.
Yes, some people are enslaved to him.
Moving on. $50. And the book is, you get about
200 odd pages, I think.
Yeah, it's just a shade over 200. It's about 225. Let's get the official count is 225. I nailed it.
Wow, right on the number.
Damn, I'm good. With the flyleaf.
Again, this is a level 1 through 5 adventure.
It's a level 1 through 5 adventure, and here's what you get for just from starting off. So, obviously, it's going to be set in Waterdeep. Obviously, it's going to be part of Forgotten Realms. Obviously, it's going to be on the Sword Coast. Let's just talk about some of the little bells and whistles that come with this bad Jackson before we dive into what the adventure actually entails. For people who don't know what the hell Waterdeep is, good news. There is about 30 pages of
lead up
lore just on Waterdeep in the back, which covers such fun things as a long history, taxes,
what they call their currency,
the laws, their currency, everything, things that they would, way people handle discussions, phrases, ways you can just ingratiate and describe the city better, which is good because the problem with, running a super city that isn't of your own creation is you don't necessarily know everything off the top of your head, and it can be difficult as a DM sometimes. So you do get a nice, big, fat old history lesson in the book that you can read and study up on to run the game better. I also like that it's written from the perspective of Volo.
Notoriously unreliable.
Yeah, notoriously unreliable, but always an enthralling read.
I also wanted to say, before we get any further, there is a nice little cartoonish sketch of, I believe it's 85 characters from not so much Forgotten Realms specifically, but as Dungeons and Dragons in general. There's also Matthew Mercer in it, but he's Dungeons and Dragons character now, I guess.
He is probably one of the biggest driving forces.
I can't remember the name of the artist, but I've seen their work before.
We can probably find it in the front of the book, but
we'll worry about that later.
Yeah. So let's start at the very beginning. Couple of things that I do like. They even though this is supposed to be 1 through 5, they've got it factored for both moving through levels by experience, and then they also have milestones set at the end of the chapters, so you can run things in that way if you'd like. They have a lot of factions. There's a lot of kind of gritty reading that you have to do if you really want to get the setup for this nailed down, because there are a lot of factions, there's a lot of moving pieces, and you are in Waterdeep, which is a massive city.
So large that I believe you don't need to go looking for a specialty vendor to find stuff.
Yeah, it's there's rules listed for going out and finding stuff, and long story short, it doesn't take long. So let's start with how the adventure actually runs. From the DM side of things, before you sit down with your friends and or maybe people you just tolerate, but you want them at your D&D table, I don't judge you.
There's people you despise and you'd like to run through the ringer too.
Yeah. Then you sit down, you're making your preparations, and you get to choose one of 4 villains to run as your main villain for this game. I'm going to go over the villains briefly here and just kind of describe their sums and motivations. That's one of my biggest things that I'm very happy with the book, actually, I've got to say. The villains that they've written are actually pretty well written and well motivated. We have Xanathar.
Of the fame of Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Yes. The Massive Beholder is back as the villain if you run it in springtime. The villain depends on the season of the year you choose to run the game, or the season depends on the villain, however you want to look at it.
And either way, it changes the layout and number of encounters.
Yes. So you have Xanathar, who is doing Beholder Xanathar things. His character is just funny.
He's the comedy appeal option.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the ways that you can defeat him is by threatening his goldfish. So
yeah, he won't actually back down if you threaten to kill his goldfish. But Xanathar is also ruthless, and you can do a lot of dark comedy stuff with Xanathar.
He's at the end of the day, he is a monster. So.
Yeah. That brings us to the Castellanters. The Castellanters are a very interesting set of villains. They are a couple. They are a couple of the masked lords of Waterdeep, and their whole shtick for, again, spoilers. One more time, spoilers. They are trying to achieve the goal of getting the 500,000 gold coins that are at the end of the adventure to pay off Asmodeus to get out of the contract so they don't have to lose their kids' souls. Damn.
Understandable motivation. Don't like the characters themselves.
Don't like the characters themselves, but they're interesting in the way that they're written, that they actually don't try to kill the players.
Yeah.
Like, if the players actually show up at their house, they
won't invite you in for tea or anything, but they're just going to tell you to leave.
They're going to tell you to leave, and even if you start doing the barbarian kick down the door stuff, it's written very, very specifically that they will not just straight up murder your ass, even though they can cast some 7th and 8th level spells, maybe even a 9th level. I have to double check that. But their motivations are brought in the fact that they want to get out of their contract with Asmodeus. They already lost one kid by sacrificing him to him, and they got 2 who are about to lose their souls. So they're trying to get the 500,000 gold pieces that are at the center of this adventure. The next villain is, and I might box this. I'm gonna give it a shot. Jarl Axel Bainray. I know there's a
pronunciation guide in the front, which helps because some of these names are a bit weird.
Yeah. Let's just try to nail that down really quick. Jarl Axel Bainray. Yeah, nailed it.
Got it. One. Nice.
He is a male drow, which is important to point out. He leads a
criminal gang of other male drow.
Yes. And his main shtick is he has become the Lord of Luskan, a criminal port and haven for thieves. and he is trying to get all of the monies, the 500,000 gold dragons that are available.
1 million gold.
Yeah, he's trying to get all of that sweet, sweet money so he can buy his way into the Lord's Alliance, which is a thing between all the Sword Coast cities.
Fantasy United Nations.
Yep, and
with actual power.
And he's going to try to buy his way in by leveraging Waterdeep's own money against them. And he is he's written as a sarcastic, flamboyant, and very funny villain who is usually, in a lot of the ways his encounters with the players are written, he is very congratulatory if they are clever enough to figure out his bullshit.
He will just take you down, though, if you threaten him.
Yeah, no, he can be a little ruthless, but for the most part, he actually generally enjoys the players. And then we have Monsoon dude.
Crazy wizard.
Yeah, he's a crazy wizard.
Number 726.
Yeah, he's got he's got a really cool backstory. By using Simulacrum, cast a spell, tried to make a bunch of clones of himself. The original one's dead, but all the cloned wizards came or woke up at the same time, and then they all started fighting for who was number one. He's one of the survivors, and he is trying to get his hands on that sweet, sweet money so he can go back under the mountain and fight the Mad Mage. So you have 3 very interesting villains, and then Manchun. I'm sorry, I just after reading him, I was just like, okay, he's got a cool look though. He looks like a fantasy Doctor Doom a little bit. And he's got a bit of a Doctor Doom vibe going on. After reading all the villains and stuff, though, you've got 3 pretty good options. Manchun, even though I just gave him some shit, he's actually got a lot of really cool stuff in his arcs. And from there, you really have to decide for the adventure. Once you've picked your villain, you get to look at the next step, which is your encounter chains. The encounter chains are wonderful and wacky. Each time, because even though they're all described as the same places, there are, I believe, 10 of them.
They happen in different ways.
They all happen in different ways. Each one is used in a completely different fashion every time. A good example, we'll just say, is going to be the converted windmill. In the converted windmill, you, if it's winter, or no, not winter, I apologize. If it's summer and you are, going against the Castellanters, then you run into a failed or a ruined painter who's locked herself away and lives in this converted windmill, and she can bring her paintings to life to attack you. Neat. If you're going there in the winter, however, it's a butcher shop.
Where a butcher hides human bodies, because of course they do.
Yeah, because he's a mean guy. Each and every one of these changes depending on what adventure chain you're running. So if you're going to take your players back through this again, you're like, well, that was fun. You guys want to do it again? They're like, yeah. Then actually the game changes drastically depending on your choice of villain. So let's get to the very beginning of the book. Game starts out with you in...
We can't dawdle on this too long, of course, because there's a lot of it to cover.
There's a lot to cover. Start in the Yawning Portal. From Yawning Portal, you meet Volo. Volo gives you a fun little quest. You have to go find one of his drinking buddies. He rewards you with a pat on the back and a deed to a nice little manor. The manor is haunted, and you can convert it, or it's a manor / bar. You can repair it, fix it up. And
for the staggering price of, at your level, 1,000 gold pieces.
Yep, level 2, and already 1,000. Actually, no, that's a pretty good analogy for going to college. I'm only level 2. How do I have 1,000 gold debt? Sorry. After that, you're going to be approached by various guilds, organizations. Again, all these organizations that we mentioned. And then, you're kind of going to dawdle around.
Doing some side stuff.
Doing some side stuff for a bit. And then the adventure really begins in Chapter 3, where a mysterious fireball blows shit up in front of your bar, and you have to start tracking stuff down. It's at this point that a lot of the villains who have been kind of set up and announced throughout the adventure at this point, the main one, the one you've chosen, comes into play. And that's where our adventure begins, by you trying to track down a Nimblewright, which is a mechanical construct that's running around with a damn necklace of fireballs and the Stone of Galore, which is an important part of the story.
We're not going to spoil any
Which-
more than that.
Yeah, which, well, we did say spoilers, which is an aboleth turned into a stone. That's badass. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this adventure, because, we're going to be in this, you're in a city, your players are going to do what they damn well please. Sometimes they'll, follow the question exactly. Sometimes they'll run off and do what they want.
I do want to note specifically that this adventure seems to be more on rails than the Orient Express. A lot of times, if your players do something that the adventure doesn't approve of, it just says the character is arrested. It doesn't ask you to have them make a test to not be arrested. It just says they're arrested.
They actually, they do cover it earlier in the book about players getting arrested.
Yes, but I know, but it still seems to me a lot like they just sort of, this is the only path you can go down. If you do something remotely out of this ordinary, bad things are happening.
They also hit you with the code legal pretty early on. You can, there's a printed copy of the code legal that you can just slap in front of the players' faces in the back. I disagree with that assertion, because there's a whole lot of ways where they're like, well, you can be little bastards about it. You just have to be very clever little bastards. There's not a whole ton of open fighting in this game, and there's not a whole lot of really. I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Okay, I'm going to reframe that. With this adventure, the players are going to be surrounded by remarkably powerful beings at all times. The villains...
As is tradition for Forgotten Realms, Wise and Elminster doing this.
Yep. You ain't got time for this shit. It's on you, the new guy. The red shirt. I think the weakest villain is the Castellanter, and he's like a 10 CR and pretty effective spellcaster. Jarl Axel is about like a 15 CR. Xanathar's just a beholder, but just a beholder at 14 CR, and Manshun's a 13th CR enemy. There's also remarkably powerful people like the Open Lord of Waterdeep, and she's very powerful. And the Blackstaff is running around, and she's very powerful. And so what winds up happening in this adventure that I really like that they do is you have to be clever. There is not a whole lot of kick open the door, grab the axe, scream in faces, murder the puppies, murder hoboing.
Well,
there can be. There are options for that.
No, I disagree. I read through the first 2 chapters, and it seems like each time there's only one step forward, and it assumes that you must do that previous step in lockstep.
Well, that is just the setup to get to Troll Skull Alley. I think this adventure can be run just fine starting out at Troll Skull Alley. Like, the bar's been renovated. Everybody sits at chapter 3.
It's just my assertion here is that this adventure has some problems with being on rails. As a spectacle of showing off, ooh, look at all these cool NPCs, rather than letting the PCs do things.
Well, moving on. The primary focus of the adventure is going to be getting to the Dragon Vault, where 500,000 dragons have been. That's the name of the gold pieces in Waterdeep.
Not actually 500,000 dragons. That'd be exciting, but threatening.
Yeah, have been smuggled and nestled into a little. I'm having such a brain fart right now. It's in a little vault. There we go.
Yes,
I don't know why I couldn't think of vault. Anyways,
a maze, basically.
Yeah, so they're put in the vault. They're being protected by a dragon. I don't know why anybody has been clever enough to say 500,001 dragons.
Whatever.
And
Sorry.
The entire the quest basically ends once you finish your confrontation with Oranax, the dragon, downstairs, and due to depending on what factions you talk to, who your villain is, and all the other various...
Somebody's coming to kick your ass.
Somebody's coming to kick your ass. Somebody's coming to help your ass. Somebody might be coming to kick your ass, then help your ass, then kick your ass. There are a mind-numbing amount of combinations for how each of these can pan out based on who the party is, what the party's alignments are, who they're aligned with, and their plans for all that damn money.
Yeah. And, of course, at the end of the encounter, you're not allowed to keep any of that money, but...
Well...
Yeah, so you're allowed to keep 10%.
Which is 50,000 gold.
It's still a lot, but the way they enforce you to actually pay up on it is pretty irritating. I suppose. It feels again like get back on the rails, peasant.
Well, you can remember though that it is your game, and if you can do whatever you damn well please. If your party,
Agreed, but that doesn't change. That's how it's written.
yeah, but I think that's just being semantics. It's more I think the ideas being suggested in this book are fun. So for $50, here's what I think they've accomplished with Waterdeep, Dragon Heist. It's a more political game. It is less, out in the woods adventure. I find a lot of the other adventures to actually feel more railroady because it's like, well, you can either go jerk off in the woods or you can get back to the damn plot. Or you can go out in the woods and, do stuff in the forest. Although I will say Tomb of Annihilation was a little bit different. Tomb of Annihilation read pretty openly, but it's still all roads lead to Alcerac. But that's every adventure book, though. You have to eventually get to the end stuff. It's very political. It encourages very clever play by the players and thinking of solutions that just aren't hitting stuff or blowing shit up with magic, which I appreciate.
It's also an urban game, which I appreciate.
There is, while Paul might find the flashy NPCs a bit much, I think Waterdeep's a high fantasy setting, and
that's fine, but it feels like they're being introduced at the expense of the players.
It depends on how it all. I think it depends on how it all goes down, and their base interactions. There's a lot of NPCs that are easily beneath the player's pay grade that can be kicked around. My personal favorite, the man who tends the goldfish of Xanathar. It's a little dwarf who's got just his little fish net, and his job is to make sure that fish stays alive, and then replace it in case it dies before Xanathar notices. Otherwise, he's gonna get zapped. There's a lot of colorful, fun, bright NPCs. Again, the four different arcs that you can go with this offer variety, and if your players get off book, then it's just on you to steer the ship back in, which can be done. It can be a little tricky. But the mystery hooks that they introduce in Chapter 3 are actually pretty good, because once you start finding out more and more about their 500,000 gold out there, and there's a bunch of, conspiracies and threats and all these, the web and the net begins to tighten. It's a fun, I think it's a lot of fun. It reads like it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm actually looking to put a group together to play it.
So don't watch this podcast, guys.
Yeah, so my players, please don't watch this.
Bit too late for that, but or
whatever. Ultimately, I think it's worth the Amazon price of $28, $29, whatever it ends up falling at for Amazon. I went to my friendly local and picked it up for $50, but overall, at a scant 225 pages, if you're really into Waterdeep and you get all that great information and stuff, cool. I think the villains and stuff are great, but for $50, it's still, you really, really have to be into it. Like for me, I love political games. I love being set in a city. I love urban exploration. I love all those concepts that they introduce in this book. But if you are a person who does not like that shit, then this book isn't for you. Paul, thoughts and opinions?
All right, time to play bad cop, I guess. I do like the art in this book. I like the original character designs. I feel like this book could have been 4 separate adventures. And that's both a point in its favor and a point against it. I feel like a lot of stuff got carved up and there's a lot of overlap necessary to make those 4 adventures fall into the same lines. Also, I think the villains outside of the drow and the 2 nobles are perhaps weaker and maybe not worthy of their time. I feel like they had 2 very good concepts for villains and then just threw in 2 others.
Yeah.
Well, the encounter design is nice. The part with the racist gold dragon staff is nice too. I mean,
yeah, we didn't really cover that.
There's a staff the gold dragon has that prevents any other dragons from entering the city because it's racist.
No, that's reversed. There is a ward on the city that prevents dragons from running in because Waterdeep is racist against dragons. he has a staff that allows him to walk around in the city so he can hang out with his fat ass pile of gold.
So he doesn't get thrown out Team Rocket style.
Blasting off again.
Well, again, besides all this, I feel like this book is perhaps too much of an advertisement for the next adventure, which is supposed to be a 5th to 20th level adventure, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which makes me wonder what kind of crack they were smoking to think that an adventure spanning that many levels is going to work out.
Damn, that is actually a blistering take. And a little rude to Chris Perkins. I thanked him from our official Twitter.
I mean, I'm sure it's going to work out fine, but then you got the problems that it's either going to railroad your players even harder than this book does, or you're going to have issues where your players aren't able to keep up with the encounters.
I don't know. I'm actually really excited to see what they do with that book, because it's the way it's been described is it's just going to be the biggest dungeon ever.
But they've already done that. They've done that with levels 1 to 20 dungeons in 3rd edition.
I know, but it's for 5th edition. They're bringing it back. It's supposed to take a long time, and they're really hyping it up for their Adventurers League content.
Okay, Adventurers League makes sense, but it feels to me like 5th edition should probably try to stay away from so much hardcore dungeon crawling, because that's not what the system does best.
I can agree with that.
That's all I've really got to say. And I still think it's a good book, but I feel like they probably would have been better off if they'd split it into 2 books.
I do think they could actually do. Well, there is more stuff that you can do above ground. What I guess an addendum to what I already said is there is easily a setup in this, and with all the people they presented, that the adventure can continue after level 5. And you can set up another villain. There is enough world set up in here for Waterdeep itself. Certain things like with characters like the Blackstaff and stuff, that once you start getting to 6th, 7th, 8th level, and you can start approaching the level of some of these bad Mamma Jammas, you could continue to run a homebrew game that started off with the Dragon Heist.
Understandable. I can agree with that. Again, though, I think that parading around the Forgotten Realms' finest for the players to gawk at feels a bit too much like a tourist attraction rather than an adventure focusing on the players.
Fair enough. All right. So that's that for talking about Dragon Heist.
Still worth the Amazon price.
Yeah, I think it's worth the Amazon price if you don't like political intrigue and stuff. For me, it was worth the $50. I enjoy the book. Okay. So now that we're done talking about Dragon Heist, there is a couple of things I do want to address, though, from that book. And the first one is that jaw-dropping amount of money.
500,000 gold. Guarded by a gold dragon.
Embezzled gold from the city. And depending on how things shake out...
which must have had some tremendous brass balls in that guy for embezzling, the entire city's income for a decade.
Yeah, well, depending on how things shake out, your party is going to be left with, unless they're all a bunch of goody two-shoes, they're going to be left with a staggering amount of money, even if they take the 10% option.
And not
from
get
the open
instantly arrested and then hunted down by teleporting death squads because stay on the rails peasant.
Wow, damn, you really, I did not read that when I read it. I just read, people are eventually going to find out you got that much money. Because they do describe in different parts of the book how difficult that much money is to move physically. Like the Castlelanters, when they steal that money, because it's
100,000 pounds, yeah. Sorry, 10,000
It takes them like 10 carts, like being worked by devils, and they're just moving these giant bags filled with thousands of gold and stuff. It takes like 10 long round trips, so that physically that much damn money, people are going to find out.
It's difficult to carry around secretly.
But let's talk about what your players can actually do with their money. This kind of ties back into what we were doing last week, talking about items. Because something I usually find my players do to me a lot, some don't have this problem, but a lot of them do, is a lot of them just hoard cash.
They just want to be wealthy.
They have just a insane amount of gold. got more comments coming in.
We'll cover those in a second. Finish what you're saying.
It's a lot of nacho. A lot of nacho talking. But a lot of players end up hoarding cash, and it's hard to find like productive ways for them to spend it because they either want to buy a stupid big item or they want to just sit on it and just
slowly evolve into a dragon over time.
Yeah, they just have it. And it's it can be difficult sometimes to find like good ways for them to blow money that isn't buying potions and the occasional magic item. I will read Nacho's comment on this though. He wants to buy all the horses and he wants to put them all in full barding with his money.
Oh, sick.
And he wants to buy a ballista.
Yeah, what are you doing with your players once they have enough money to raise and feed an army?
Then you let them raise and feed an army. It's a difficult thing to find an answer to because you can't just sit there and just be like, well, you could do this with your money. Well, you could do that with your money. Letting them figure out organic ways to spend money can be difficult at times because that kind of comes down to their backstory.
Yeah.
I did have one player once, Sophie. Her character wanted a bakery. She was a shit baker. She was really good at killing zombies, but she was a shit baker, but she'd always wanted a bakery. She got her bakery, and then one of the other players burnt it down. She was in debt because my party is monsters. But the point is other than that, a few other situations, I haven't really found many situations where players invest in property, try to buy many things that they can upgrade. And I think a combination of that might lie with me and also the player. Because if I don't, as a DM, you really have to make those options available. Like, you can do anything with your money. You're currently
invest in real estate and bullion.
After 8 months of playing and we're, at level 9 or 10 and you've just been sitting on stacks of cash. You're now up to like 4,000 or 5,000 gold. Like,
still eating the cheapest meals available and sleeping in ditches.
Yeah. Like, what do you want to do with your cash? And that is an answer that my players can rarely answer. Paul, do you have any advice for getting your players to spend money on fun stuff that doesn't make it feel like you're running a counting simulator?
I haven't actually had much of an issue with that, I'll be completely honest. Most of my players have either been interested in wealth for its own sake, that's to say they go on a heist to get money in order to do things, or my players tend to spend it on frivolous things, mixed with some magical items, but I've had players pick up random trinkets off of market stalls. That said, investing in property is tricky. It was one of my things that my players used to do a lot, but don't do so much nowadays. But the problem is that Dungeons & Dragons is a game that assumes that you are adventurers that are going on an adventure. That does not usually involve dealing with the homeowners association.
Or every damn guild in Waterdeep. Just going back to the book, when they do give you the bar, when the bar is given to you as it's a pretty early gift you get. It's chapter, end of chapter 1, beginning of chapter 2.
Yep.
You have to deal with every damn guild in Waterdeep, and Waterdeep is a union town because there is a union for everything, and you will be yelled at if you don't use the union. I do, just going back to Waterdeep for 2 seconds, I do love that they give players property because I do think a home base, a fortress of solitude,
it does up the stakes a bit,
is something that every party should eventually try to get their hands on. Just a home base, a place where they can do wacky, weird things. Taverns are fun. Extra dimensional spaces are gravy.
A permanent magnificent mansion.
Yeah, the occasional castle. But when it comes to your players owning property, it's a fine line, and it's really depending on how hard your players want to push, I've always found. With how much accounting you have to do. Because sometimes players want to know exactly where all of their gold is going.
That reminds me of, I believe the game is Barbarians of Lemuria, which is a sort of Conan the Barbarian style adventure game where whenever your characters find adventure, you're not supposed to count it. You just have a pile of treasure, and it goes away before the next adventure, and you describe how you squandered it.
Huh. That is interesting.
If they want to count it, laugh at them. What are you, an accountant?
Yeah. Excuse me.
Take your time.
You're good. But back to that point, trying to find, just using the player's handbook and the DM's guide and a couple other things to figure out where that money is going and how that money is being divvied up and spent. Because what, like a bar of soap's a copper piece. So then we got to start doing the, 10 coppers make 1 silver. And then if you start getting into the very nitty gritty little stuff, unless you're super into math, then that can be very annoying.
The economy is messed up.
The economy in this game is a little janky because it doesn't all quite seem to add up. So finding ways to encourage your players to spend money, I guess, is just really hit them with that follow your dreams and ambitions when they have downtime. That's all
works.
that's all I can think to say, really. I mean, players getting property, I think, is a great thing in the game. As far as it gives them, kind of like we were talking about, like a signature item.
Yeah.
A home base, like using the King Arthur thing. Like King Arthur ain't jack without Excalibur and Camelot.
It's true.
He's got the gang, he's got the boys, he's got the sword,
The lads.
he's got the castle, he's got his sister.
We don't
Causes
talk about that.
a lot of problems. So encouraging just more open communication between you and the players, and a lot of players I've found do get better at this sort of thing once you just talk and be like, your character
Hoarding cash.
Well, your character is not just gonna be like, all right, well, when's the next time we ship out for blowing stuff up, unless that is their character. Most of them are like, what are you doing in your downtime? What makes them happy? They don't just wake up and murder everything unless that's their character.
In which case, you should talk to them about changing their character, because that's not very entertaining.
Well, that, or you should maybe consider getting them some help.
Yeah.
Depending on how into it they are.
Indeed.
So, Paul, what can we spend $500,000 gold on?
Property.
Nacho's been dumping ideas in the chat left and right.
Care to read some of the best and brightest while I think about what exactly you could do with that cash that'd be a stable investment?
Can they put it into an annuity?
Nobody's going to have enough money to back that annuity up.
Yeah, I know.
No, the answer is you probably buy property, you hire long-term retainer services, you fund caravan expeditions to make you even more money. You eventually become landed nobility. You buy your way into nobility. You set yourself up. Set for life. You know how it is.
I'm buying one Holy Avenger.
That sword, that's totally worth retiring to a life of luxury.
Yep. I just want it, okay? I don't know how I've never, for all the times I've played Paladins as a player in a game, I've never gotten one. So just me, personally, I'm getting it. I'm going to go buy one.
This comes back, of course, to the magic item mark problem of who is selling it for that much and how do they really seriously expect to have a buyer. Because the number of people who could probably use that and have the cash to pay for it could be counted on one hand.
No, yeah, it's so... I love that they present this idea, because even if you, split the money between all the party, you get, let's assume it's a party of 5. Each person gets 100,000 gold. And that's just, in Dungeons and Dragons, that is fuck you money.
That's crash the local economy money.
That is like I suddenly control everything in my local vicinity money, except in Waterdeep, because Waterdeep is apparently Waterdeep could apparently lose 500,000 gold pieces, and the economy
Nobody
is
would
just
notice.
Yeah, everyone's just like, oh wow, that's inconvenient.
I mean, I suppose if every one person lost 1 gold, it'd be disappointment, but wouldn't be city ruining. Waterdeep's a big city.
Yeah, but considering a lot of the stuff is
Also, damn.
Silver
When
and
do we get
compass.
an embezzlement skill so we can embezzle 500,000 gold?
I think that applies as persuasion and sleight of hand. That is, I don't know how happy or upset I would be if my party just started being embezzlers. Like, Can you imagine that? Just like, it's not even evil party. It's just they do white collar crime.
Yeah, they skim the till.
We are going to infiltrate the bank. Are you going to try to rob it? Hell no. We're going to slowly skim off the top on the exchange rate of silvers and coppers from dwarven cities to human cities. And if we just remove small enough money, they'll never notice. Over 15 years, we'll all be wealthy beyond our wildest dreams. Assuming, of course, that no wars start or there is no trade disputes.
And somebody doesn't mess it all up, of course.
White collar crime.
Dungeons & Dragons is the perfect game for white collar crime.
Water deep white collar crime.
Fuck Shadowrun. Dungeons & Dragons is where it's at as far as white collar crime goes.
Well, I think we've kind of expanded our show. This is our wacky attempt at trying to cover an adventure. I mean, we got 19 more minutes. We got anything else we want to talk about, Paul?
Well, I was going to talk about the economy, but we could also talk a bit about, you mentioned wanting to talk about putting together a new game if the old one goes down in flames. And I believe I also at some point wanted to talk about how to manage that much money.
Manage that money. I think we'll do starting a new party next week along with spooky stuff.
That sounds good. So I suppose the real problem is that, and they do actually cover this in Dragon Heist, is that kind of money doesn't go unnoticed. Like, they only cover the somewhat positive effects of people coming to you to beg for money or ask for donations or bring you business opportunities. But they don't bring up that as somebody who is not a noble and doesn't have a legion of guards and the law on their side, you're probably going to get robbed a lot. I mean, I don't know you want me to tell you. Like, if you go to an inn and you throw gold coins at the innkeeper, he's probably going to take 20 or 30 out of your pockets while you're asleep.
You know, just making it hail.
Well, yeah, stripper's not going to like you much.
God damn it.
Ow, ow, ow. Investing in property is all well and good, but Dungeons & Dragons does not exactly have the mechanics to make that work.
I wonder, that's something we should have looked on the DM's Guild for, because I'm pretty sure somebody has had to have made some sort of extra, book for
managing real estate.
Yeah, managing real estate, and because I know Matthew Colville made a book for like how to build a castle and how to maintain it and all that stuff, and like how to use a castle, like siege warfare and stuff, and his own siege warfare rules. And like there's the prices out there for like buying a castle, buying an airship, buying all that stuff, but they don't really talk about maintenance or overtime stuff too much. They get into it a little bit for this is just the general cost.
Yeah, one of my other concerns, I guess, is this is a huge lump sum of cash. So what happens to your players when they run out, when they've bought all this stuff and they can't afford to maintain it? They have to keep. I mean, you could have them have to keep adventuring in order to maintain it, but eventually they're either going to die or fall behind in their payments, and bad stuff is going to happen.
Don't let them think that far ahead. Just let them live in the moment, man. All right, let them enjoy the fact that they're stupidly rich and, they've now hit the lottery.
They've blown all their cash in a really expensive car and a flat screen TV as long as your house.
Have you seen my airship? You seen what this puppy can do?
It's got flame streaks on the side and it's painted bright red, and
yeah,
it's still really slow, but
Lamborghini.
A Lamborghini, if you will.
Yeah. Jeez.
That was bad.
Yeah, no, we are bad today.
Again, the problem is that even with the magic item mart, you have the problem with that a single magic item is probably not worth the equivalent of several houses. And we were talking a bit about, and they give you like a management table for your inn, and how much money it makes is randomly determined. It's 1,000 gold to renovate a completely dilapidated manor into a usable state. And then it's 60 gold per week to
operate, which assumes, hirelings, staff, paying for food, wine, all that,
and
upkeep.
I mean, again, this is at minimum 10,000 gold getting dumped on you to do stuff like this. So where do you go? Because the average noble only makes 300 a month, and you can almost certainly invest beyond that with that much money. So what's next? Like, sure, they say, oh, you should head down into Undermountain, but if I was to say, fuck that, I just won the lottery. I'm off to go run a business somewhere for the rest of my days. I'm not going down there and fighting a crazy mage.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna stay up here and retire and have mimosas. Like I can wake up every day. I can just manage my business and my properties, and I can just go from there. I've hit the, I used to be an adventurer
big time.
Yeah, I used to be an adventurer until I got a shit ton of money, and then now I'm done. Retired.
I mean, that's another question. Let's move into that. Why do people adventure?
Usually it's loot.
Yes. In fact, in the old days of Dungeons & Dragons, it was always loot because loot was the primary motivating factor. And we're talking again about getting this huge sum of money dumped in your lap.
Yep.
So I guess the problem is that to risk your life for a good payoff, that's well and good if you're down on your luck or if you're trying to repay your debt or if you're trying to make a name for yourself. But once you've done that, why do you keep adventuring?
Well, and then it comes back to the back and forth of the plot. Like, for Dragon Heist, it would actually make sense for, except for the most gung-ho or, the most, like, loving the adventure lifestyle to keep adventuring. After they got the money, only the most, I said that backwards. Only the most gung-ho would still keep going out. Like, most people would just retire after they get that lump sum of cash. Like, cool, solved the mystery. We did all that stuff. I'm going to,
I can return to my family triumphant and pay off my debt or...
pay off my debt and go live in a quiet farmhouse and, just run a caravan company. Booyah. But when the plot, is the end of the world, then usually the adventurers have to keep adventuring.
Well, yeah, because not the world. That's where I keep all my stuff.
Yeah, all my stuff is on the world. I can't just have my world getting blown up. That's bad.
Unless you can move to Sigil or something.
Well, yeah. But I think we'll cover why adventurers should be adventuring in getting your group together next week.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, we'll put that together as a session 0. I mean, yeah, I think we've covered this topic pretty extensively on what people can do with money.
Yeah, so far anyway. You're going to give us something else then?
Nope. I think we're just going to call it early this week. We nailed it. Done.
All right, well.
Boom. All right. Guys, it's been a show. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about spooky stuff because Halloween's a-coming. We're going to talk about putting together a brand new game. And, yeah, that's going to be it. Till then, I'm Jake.
I'm Paul.
And we hope you enjoyed today's kind of scatterbrained Dragon Heist review. If you liked our stuff, despite it, I don't think we were up to snuff this week, Paul. It's been a long weekend for both of us. Please go to our Facebook, like our page. Follow us on Twitter at 3DMsPod.
Despite there only being 2 of us.
Yep. We're nachos in the comments, being lively, being fun.
It's true.
Go to facebook.com/3DMs podcast. 3 spelled the old fashioned way, THREE. We record out of the PodcastDetroit studios in Royal Oak, Michigan. If you want to start your podcast and you live in Michigan, check out Podcast Detroit. It's pretty easy. Trying to think of anything else. Did we miss anything else?
Not unless you got a sponsor we missed.
Nope. We ain't got no sponsors.
All right.
Not this month.
I think we're good to go.
Huh. Damn, we really finished this one up quick. Awkward.
Right, well, have a good day, guys.
Well, bye. Maybe. Maybe it'll end. There it goes. She's done.